What up? That's St. Lauren 57. So, I'll get to part 2 of how at St. Lauren 57 came to be. So, sum it up, I kind of gave like the first event that really impacted my mental health. But the one thing I did forget is that my boyfriend at the time, because like I said, my dad had got my car from the tow yard. He said he couldn't drive it, but nothing but 2 blocks. When I left my car, it was running beautifully. Other than the slow leak in the tire, like mechanically, everything was fine. And so anyways, my boyfriend at the time obviously was a mechanic and, knows so much more than me. I was just learning. But he had gone underneath the car, and long story short, basically what he could tell is that the car had been driven off of a curb and probably backed back onto the curb, and that's why the bolt of the oil pan came apart. And so that's why when I went to go put in oil, it all just leaked out. And he could see like scrapes from the front of underneath the car all the way to the back. So that was kind of his diagnosis, his analysis of the damage of the car. So I think my dad was probably pissed off when he picked it up. It's crazy how my dad can smoke cigars and drink, but he always has a problem with people who, whether they smoke weed or obviously do other things. And I smoke cigarettes, and I don't know, like my dad is just, he just is like, I don't know, he's a hypocrite, to be honest. You know what I'm saying? Because it doesn't matter what mind altering substance you have of choice, like it does damage. And even the illegal ones, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like I've never gotten in trouble with the law with anything until I had a moment with alcohol that, you know what I'm saying, did not do me well. So anyways, so that I forgot to mention. So basically, like, I'm pretty sure that he was being negligent, because, I mean, a tow company, I've had my car towed many a times. I've never had damage like that ever done, and I think it just, like I said, my dad has no sentimental value. He doesn't respect anybody's property. He doesn't respect anybody's space, and so, whatever damage was done, and he didn't plan on paying to fix it. And also, like I said, it was one more thing that led to him to be able to be in control of where I went and where, if I could come and go, So anyways, like I said, that was the event that really just triggered my mental health. Like, I already had, like, resolved my, childhood trauma for the most part. Like, I'd already put that away. And here we go again with, my dad just doing the same thing that he does all the time, with me, always just parenting me out of fear and taking control. And, it's always about control and, just being this tyrant. And so anyways, fast forward, the money was running out in order for me to pay the rent and to take care of me and primarily my daughter, because like I said, my son was no longer with me full time, and he was supposed to come every other weekend to see me, and his father was cutting that short. There was always something that was coming up on my weekend, so that was really hard to deal with, because my son had always, me and his father split the time, but once my son started school, he was with me through the school year, the academic year, and then we'd swap when he'd go to, during summer to go to his dad's. So, and then he has a sister, like he doesn't have siblings from his father. So, his sister was also lonely and missing him, and I was missing him. And so that was really tough, because no one had a conversation with me about, where my children were going. No one asked me about, anything. No one, like, I was like, my title was stripped of being a mom because of however my father felt and whatever he felt was best. And, instead of keeping the co-parenting between me and my kids' dads, they allowed my dad to basically replace my, like, my, how would you say that? Like, my authority, I guess. And so, yeah, so that happened. And then, like, the money was running out. My boyfriend wasn't working. I had told him, hey, it's coming to a point where I'm not going to be able to pay for the apartment. So I need you to do something. And so he went to the Bay Area to go help a friend to do things around, whatever, his mechanics were and around his mother's home, and was going to make money for rent. Well, come like, the communication had kind of died off, and I was really in a bad place because here we go. My father tells me not to get a job. My father takes control of my life. My father says he's going to help me out financially. I sign up for school. I do everything he asks. And then he takes off and goes out of town again and doesn't pay the rent. So there we go. This is the second time my father has left me high and dry financially where I can lose my home. And then now here comes my boyfriend who knows what needs to be done, and he leaves me high and dry. So come like the 3rd or 5th of the month, I'm trying to ask him, like, dude, like, the rent, like, what's going on? And he's like trying to say, oh, well, I don't know where to send it, and this and that, and blah, blah, and when's it due? And I think the moment that he said, when is the rent due, is when I really checked out. Because, fucking even Bone Thugs and Harmony knows the rent is due on the 1st of the month. Like, everybody knows when rent is due. It's not due at the end. It's due in the beginning. And so I think I immediately checked out when that happened, because I was like, great, another man to leave me high and dry. Great, another situation where I'm financially stressed. And there's nothing worse than financial stress. There's nothing worse than realizing, like, okay, great, like, everything is coming to an end right now because I am not working. I just finished school 2 months prior. And I just think that really made me check out. And so then let's see. So, I want to say a little bit after that, like I said, I definitely mentally checked out, and I was, I started to, like, hear things. I definitely started to go into, like, really bad kind of, like, mental state where I just was hearing really intense things. And, I was distraught. I was completely distraught. And, they were really disturbing things I was hearing. And, yeah, I needed a break. And, so come the 15th. Okay, wait, so let me back up a little bit. So like I said, he didn't show up, whatever. I somehow got super lucky and was owed money from the Department of Human Assistance. And they did a back pay, so I got $1,600, like, on, like, the 12th or something. So I literally had, like, just enough money to pay my rent, because my rent was like $1,500, and so it left me with $100 more. So the next day, me and my daughter take a Lyft. We go get all these money orders, and I put money on my bonus daughter's Cash App and pay the rent. Well, come the 15th, my boyfriend shows up, and he shows up with a U-Haul, and basically he's, I guess he's going to move out. He's going to take all his tools finally that have been sitting in my apartment, and take, and I just completely had it, because I lost it. I was, thinking he was hurt and all this other crazy shit, thinking that the mother of his children had something to do with him not coming home, him not taking care of business. And, I had just been, like, losing my mind. And, I really felt let down. And so, yeah, I was like, oh, well, I just made myself look like a fool. I had thought I'd been hearing him in my head, and just, it's so insane. I've never been I've never had mental health, issues like this before. Like, I've never had, like, schizophrenia. I've never been in a psychosis from being in my addiction. Like, I've never been over paranoid, and, I've never gone through something like this. Like, I really broke. I really lost it, And So anyways, so 13th I pay the rent by the grace of God. And 15th, he shows up, takes all his stuff, and I'm like, are you going to take the stuff in the room too? Like, are you going to take, oh, I don't know. Of course you don't know, because he has communication issues. And, he has PTSD, and obviously whatever he's got going on is more important than what I got going on. So, just leave it at that. And so I just made sure that he got all of his stuff. I didn't want any of it behind. I didn't want any clothes in my room. I didn't want anything of his behind. I made sure that he got all of it, because if this is what you want to do, if you all of a sudden want to show up, and I had gotten an alternator, and so he had said he was going to help me fix the car, didn't. Couldn't even help me put the non-flat tire on it, didn't. Didn't put any money in my hand at all either. So he left, whatever. And that really broke me, because that was my soulmate, and I had let that man sit, and I didn't pressure him, and I really did my best to work with him and what he had going on, as well as me taking care of, he did, take my daughter to school. He had built a whole little carriage for her to take her to school for me, so I could go to my school, and and all these things. He was, really great with her, and, really great picking her up, and always on time, and, but, everything else fell at the wayside. Our relationship fell at the wayside. Him cleaning up fell at the wayside. Him cooking fell at the wayside. Like, I was going to school from 9:30 to 5:30, and sometimes from 9:30 to 8:30 at night if I had makeup hours. So, but then I had to cook, clean, laundry, and, everything else, grocery shop, and everything just fell apart. And so, like I said, he picked up stuff, left, and I want to say that next week, I was really struggling. I was really struggling mentally, really, and then, I want to say the next week, my daughter's father had picked her up from school, and I didn't have a phone at this time. My phone had been cut off. I couldn't pay for it. And I just could not deal. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I needed to figure something out. I just was so stressed. Like, I could barely do the bare minimum at that time. Like, it's easy for me to take care of the home and laundry and stuff like that, but I just was so upset. Like, I fucking was lost. And then after my daughter was taken from school, I started hearing like, it was crazy what I was hearing. It was really like, grotesque, and really, I basically felt like, it just felt like I was being spied on by my dad. And I just kept hearing like all these gross things, and, him saying that he had, taken advantage of my children while I was in jail. And so, and I really, after doing some therapy, I realized that a lot of the stuff I was hearing were like my biggest fears, like the loves of my life being hurt. So, I was thinking like my boyfriend at the time, like whether he was like kidnapped, or he was in a coma, or, other situations, there's so many things manifesting. And then, thinking that my father had hurt my children, had abused my children while I was in jail. And like, there was this huge confession, and for however reason I could hear it. And it just, and I realized it's just like my deepest fears, like a lot of the trauma I dealt with as a child, and abandonment, and just, the only thing I ever had as a child was protecting my family. The only thing I ever had was to like, the love of my sisters, protecting my siblings, and protecting my good friends, and just being that older sibling, and being that mom. And honestly, if it somehow that empowered me, even though it kind of created a lot of damage in a sense, and it was so it was just awful to hear some of these things, but it gave me a reason to keep going. Because if I didn't think that the loves of my life were being hurt, I probably, who knows what would have happened. I was in my apartment from the end of November until March 3rd without any power. by the grace of God, I had EBT, so I was able to feed myself, but I only had $40 cash from the month of October, the end of the month of October left, until January 30th, when I spent the last of it on cat litter, because it was just me and my cat in my apartment. And at the end of November, my power went out, and so I had to learn how to survive without power. Luckily, I had a whole bunch of these like battery operated lights that I had gotten from the dollar store over time. And I had just bought this giant pack of like batteries because my son had a VR. And so I had bought this giant pack of batteries so he could, use them for the handheld things or whatever. And so, I got lucky. And then, so that's how I did things. And then I had already had some lighter fluid, I think. Because I had to figure out like, how was I going to cook? Because, at first I just started by eating like bologna sandwiches. I learned that bologna and hot dogs, Kraft mayonnaise, and American cheese can last pretty well. Like, I would put them in the sink with like cold water because I was lucky. I still had like the apartment complex paid for gas. So I still had hot running water, because it was freezing. It was freezing that time of year. There's already no insulation in the apartment, so the apartment is crap. You know what I'm saying when it comes to that. So like, luckily I was able to stay warm by like, taking hot baths. And that was like the main thing I did. And I had developed such bad social anxiety from everything. Like I was such a social butterfly in my community. I was always hanging out with the neighborhood kids and being outside with my kids, and being outside with them, riding their bikes, watching the kids at the playground. Walking them to school, like not even just my kids, like neighborhood kids, all these things. And so I just couldn't stand to talk to anybody because I couldn't understand what I was going through. I couldn't understand why I was hearing what I was hearing so clearly. I had a neighbor who I was close with, but during my time of my time of like depression, she was nothing but a problem. And so I just couldn't even walk out my front door without someone else trying to walk out their front door and bombard me with like BS. You know what I'm saying? Just so they could try to like, I don't know. It just doesn't matter. But I had such social anxiety. Like I couldn't stand like walking out of my apartment. I couldn't stand like people. It's not that I couldn't stand people. I had no answers. I didn't know what I was going through, and it was horrible. It was, and I just felt like, I had no one to talk to. So anyways, come December, I got really tired because like I'm hearing stuff. I'm like, nobody's coming to check on me. Like I don't have, like I need to at least make sure that my kids are okay. I need to make sure that, what if I am hearing? What if I have some sort of intellect and my kids have been hurt or something? I need somebody to know, to make sure that they aren't around certain people so they don't get hurt again, or at least to make sure that they can get to have someone to talk to them to make sure they weren't hurt, so I don't have to worry about it. Or just, what I'm saying, my responsibility as a parent to protect my children. And if I am not with my kids, I need to let their fathers know. So I made a decision. I walked all the way to my daughter's dad's apartment sometime in like early December, and I just needed to make a phone call. For one, I wanted to let them know what could have possibly had happened. And for two, I needed to make a phone call. Like I needed to call my aunt. I needed somehow to reach somebody. Like I was in my apartment alone already by this time for like 2 months. You know what I'm saying? And I didn't have anyone I could talk to. I couldn't, and there's no way. And he wouldn't make the phone call for me. That's when I found out that he had called the cops and said there was a domestic dispute, and had them serve me papers for child custody. And, it was the first time in a month and a half I'd physically seen my daughter. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes with that, but we don't have to get into it, whatever. So anyway, so then, I had to walk all the way back. Now this is a 6.3 mile walk from one end of Watt to the middle end of Watt, and I had to walk that all the way back. And so that was awful because that, I didn't get the one phone call I needed, in order to talk to somebody, because So then I just, for whatever reason, I decided to turn on my daughter's tablet because there was a point where like my power did go out and she wanted to use Alexa, and my neighbor had offered to let us use her Wi-Fi so that she could do that until I had, managed to make a payment, turn the power back on. And so I turned it on and it was still connected to the Wi-Fi. And that's when I made an email, and that's when I tried to contact people, and I had started an email chain, and the email chain consisted of just so much information. Like, it was definitely overwhelming. But the only thing I know how to do is to try to keep track of everything. And all I cared about, like I said, this started as a cry for help. Like, I just was terrified that the people I love were hurt, and I needed to make sure I did my job as a mother to do whatever I could to reach people, to let them know so that my children did not get hurt any further. And also, like, I missed my children. I didn't want them to think I just left them or like I was dead or something. Like, who knows what goes through a child's mind when the parent just disappears, And so I started reading kids' books and recording it and uploading it to a YouTube channel. After the email and all that, I created the YouTube channel January 4th, and I started recording myself reading books, and in hopes that basically, like, I don't know, if their dads would allow them so they could see I was alive. And just, I used to read to my kids every night, and that was our routine. And so that's the only way I could think to comfort them, or, and not, since I'm not with them. And then I also was making videos and recording, talking about like what I was going through, and, how I was, making fire in the apartment to eat. Because, I mean, like I said, bologna sandwiches got old after a while. And I had managed to have enough money to get like some lighter fluid. I was breaking up wood kitchen utensils, and I had this grill, this like grill liner, and I was doing that in the sink or whatever. And then, a fire can't last very well like that, I'm not a freaking Boy Scout. But then it went for me, like, I had like little tin cans, and I had car oil, and I was putting car oil and a little bit of debris, and I was able to keep a fire going that way. And that's also why I learned how to charge batteries, by boiling them in water and then putting them in cold, like immediately shocking them in cold water. And actually it did work. So I was able to keep my battery powered lights around in my bathroom and in my room and in the kitchen, lit, because I had no power for 5 months. So like I said, I was lucky that I had EBT, so I was still able to shop for myself. I was able to figure out a formula to feed my cat. I had made her tuna and with instant rice and Cheerios. I tried to somehow simulate like what cat food was and what would make it edible and how we both could survive. And so, like I said, I made this YouTube channel, and then I believe I made an Instagram. I think that's how I initially got a hold of one of my great friends from when I worked at Cache Creek. And that led to her coming and seeing me. She was the first person I saw in I don't know how long. Well, then she got a hold of our other friend that we all met each other working at Cache Creek. And the lockout date was March 4th. So my friend Emery's had taken me to the court to see like what I could do about the eviction. And basically it came to a point where I did file the paperwork in time, but I would have had to pay for every extra day I needed inside, and I had no money, so that was out. And so she got a hold of my friend Rachel, and so March 3rd they came. So basically, hold on, let me rewind a little bit. So after I started the YouTube channel, and I'm kind of recording my day-to-day life, and I'm recording what I'm hearing, I'm recording what I went through as a kid, like I'm trying to talk about these things to validate like why my parentals in my life are no good, and like to validate like what I'm hearing, and just for people to understand like the severity of my feelings. Like, why is it so, like, and it's very hard to explain. Like, I've never been in a spot like that. Like, I've never had any mental disorder other than, I guess, ever the fact that, substance use disorder, that's definitely fairly new to me. Not the fact of being an addict, but just the fact that that's categorized as a mental disorder. anyways, and so, but before that, I had found one of my boyfriend's old phones. He had like a whole, I don't know, he kept all his broken phones for whatever dumb reason. And one of them, I was able to turn it on. And I was able to connect to the internet. And so I was able to get a Text Now number. And I started walking to SAC Works. And I was able to charge my daughter's tablet, my son's tablet, that phone, and work on my YouTube channel and work on these emails to bring awareness. And like I said, it was a cry for help and to try to get attention, to get help. You know, not attention, but just to bring attention to my situation. Hopefully it would fall somewhere to save me. I have no idea. And anyway, so then my, let me see if that's everything before I go further. That's pretty much everything. So then my friend Rachel had came on March 3rd, the day before the lockout. And her husband came with the trailer. And they're like, so what do you want us to take? Like, what can we save for you? And I told her, I was like, I don't think I can take anything. Like, I don't want to bother you guys with taking anything, really, because, I mean, unless you guys want anything for your guys' house, I don't know when I'm going to get back on my feet. Like, I don't even know how I'm going to pick myself up again. I have no freaking clue. And so, you know, they just took stuff. They're like, we can keep this for whatever. And then like, I was prepared at this point. Oh, actually, yes, let me back up. So before I got contact with my friends, like I created this YouTube channel. Like I said, I needed to bring attention. I needed somehow to get help. You know what I'm saying? So I started making like signs and posters and, I mean, all different types of things to bring attention to my YouTube channel. Like I would go out walking at night and I put them over the freeway on the 80 overpass, on the Watts side and the Madison side. I also put signs down Roseville Road, up Madison. Like I did a lot just to like bring viewers. I mean, maybe I would get help somehow. I just don't know how, and I don't know exactly what that would look like, but whatever. That's how this started. That's how I was promoting myself in order to bring awareness. And so, anyway, so then I'm prepared. I got this hand crank bike. I got this, like tie down strap. You know, my cat has a harness. I have a suitcase, and I'm prepared to be on the streets of Sacramento. I know where to go to get hygiene. I know where to go to charge my phone. And that's about it. That's as far as I got. And then when my friend came and she was like, hey, you know, how about you just come stay with us? And so I was able to stay there. I was able to stay there for about a month. And then, I mean, you know, they rent their home. They're not owned, so they can't necessarily have people there. But they kept me and they kept my cat as long as they could. And then I just so happened to remember my aunt's cell phone number. And I reached out to her. And I was in Woodland. I also promoted my YouTube channel out there and went and put posters out, and it was, I mean, it was an adventure, I'll tell you that. But anyways, so, I happened to remember my aunt's phone number, and I texted her. I was like, hey, like, I'm gonna be evicted, or I got evicted, like, I need somewhere to stay. And my aunt had texted me, and she was like, you know, if you need help with your state board exam, because I had just finished esthetician school, she's like, I can help you with that, but, you know, I don't think I can do anything else. And I was like, okay, that's fine. And then later on that evening, she texted me, she's like, hey, give me a call tomorrow so we can talk. I was like, all right. So the next day I gave her a call, and I hadn't talked to my aunt in so long because she and my parent had been like at odds, and there's just so much family drama and just so many things. So I hadn't been close to this aunt in a while, but I swear I don't know how I remembered her number. I'm weird with numbers though. And so anyways, I swear off the top of my head, I just remembered her number. And so I called her, and her and my uncle had been like calling 211 all day and all this stuff. And I guess my uncle, being in the restaurant industry and stuff like that, and working with imports, he had either volunteered or worked with or at the Army Depot where Plates used to be, which was a restaurant that St. John's had the clients go to and run. That was a part of the vocational training of the program. And so he knew about St. John's. And so it's funny how when I got my name, my YouTube channel back in January 4th of 2025, I named it St. Lauren 57 because my apartment number is 57. And it's just funny how I ended up at St. John's Program for Real Change, right? Ironic, coincidental, I don't know. I think that's just God. Before I even knew really who he was and how he worked. But yeah, so my uncle, had called this place and set up an orientation or set up an appointment for me to come to an orientation. They came all the way to Woodland, picked me up from my friend's house, my cat too. They brought me here. I sat for the orientation. I filled the application. A little bit later, between my aunts and my uncles, they had put me in a hotel, Motel 6 over in West Sac, and, got me, food for the kitchenette and a litter box for my cat and food for my cat, and toys for my cat and all this stuff, a carrier for my cat. And a little bit later that day, I think it was March 24th is when this happened. I got a call from the program, and from the STD counselor. I think it was Sarita from the STD counselor. She kind of just went over a couple things, and then I got a call a little bit after that from the intake coordinator at the time, Kayla, and she let me know that my application was approved and I was on the wait list. So between my aunt and uncles, they kept me fed and accompanied, took care of my cat for a month and a week in a Motel 6 in West Sac. They all came and visited me, took me out, took care of my cat, got my cat treats, and just really, what I'm saying, really supported me. And then I got the call, I think it was May 5th, that basically there was a bed open, and by May 6th was the day that I moved in to St. John's Program for Real Change. So that is how the YouTube channel originally started. I was in a serious, I just needed help. I didn't know how to get it. I'm very resourceful, obviously, and I'm really good with technology, and I'm really good at looking up information. And I mean, it was a hot mess, and it was all over the place at first, but all I could think of was my kids and my boyfriend, and making sure that I could do whatever I could do to, I couldn't just sit idly by, having information, whether it was validated or not, of people I love being hurt and just not do anything about it. That's just not who I am. And even though it was hard for others to understand and impactful for others in other ways, there's just no way. I mean, that's what kept me alive. That's what kept me going, because if I didn't have that voice of my father's and just other family members, if I didn't have that childhood trauma and the devil trying to sneak up on me like that, I don't know what would have happened to me in that apartment. Maybe I would have fell into addiction again. Maybe I would have just maybe I would have just died. Maybe I would have killed myself. Maybe if I really would have fell hopeless and helpless, maybe I would not have survived being there. But all I could think of was how to survive and what to do. I made food work. My cat got an abscess in her paw, and I handmade an e-collar, and I mixed hand sanitizer and peroxide in a spray bottle, and I would spray her paw a couple times a day, and I was able to heal my cat. The infection in her foot was so bad, I could smell it. I had a cattery for her. I could smell it. Walking from my room to the hall to where her cattery was, I could smell her foot was so bad. And I was able to fix that and heal that. Like I said, I made an e-collar out of a folder. It was a plastic folder. And, oh God, it was gauze. It was string gauze or something I had. Or maybe it was just twine of some sort. And I made her an e-collar. And then, like I said, learning how to cook, learning what foods would last, without being refrigerated. And, I was hand washing my clothes. Not that I wasn't already kind of doing that to save money, but I was hand washing my clothes. And if it weren't for the clothing line that me and my boyfriend had put up in the apartment, I don't know how I would have dried my clothes. I mean, from the end of November till March 3rd, I was in that apartment with no power. Nothing. So, you know, that was an adventure in itself, but at least I know, like, in the end of times, I will be a survivor, you know, until God says, you know, there's no need for me left in this part of, you know, life. And so, you know, it was a lot for some people, but I mean, I look at it and I'm like, damn, I really survived some serious things. I mean, and that's what I pride myself on. I've survived my whole life, but also putting myself in survival mode has also hindered me in life too. So just stay tuned for part 3. At St. Lauren 57, be safe and be kind.